With the college football selection committee due to make its selection for the final week heading into Selection Sunday, there were several teams that were looking to make a statement on this Thanksgiving weekend. Some made statements by moving up the ladder and into the selection committee's good graces, and there were some who maybe had performances this week that were forgettable, and so to the committee. Want to find out which teams had memorable performances? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, you guys. Thank you all so much for joining us after a busy holiday weekend. Of course, you are speaking with the one and only Mr. CeeLo. And guys, it was a busy weekend for yours truly, as I'm sure it was for all of you, as we get into what arguably is going to be known as the darkest Saturday, the darkest week in college football. We saw many teams check in and many teams check out of the top 10, the top 25, and more importantly, possibly the selection committee's graces. But first things first, we got to get the housekeeping out of the way. As Brad, as always, giving me a big old gab out. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend, as always. Boom, the man Ashton, absolutely. Go Mutts. Yeah. Ashton for Heisman, absolutely. Howdy, bro. 8 overtimes, dogs win. It took you that long? I blew them out in 4 quarters. Not in overtime. Not 2, not 3. None. Just saying.
It's official. You suck.
He says, the only problem I have with ND is join the ACC in football, brother. LOL. You know, let's get that out of the way. And he brings up, my buddy Brad brings up a really good point, because people want to know why Notre Dame. It's all got to do with tradition and the money. Listen, if Notre Dame can't survive without the conference, then they would join. See, this is why a lot of teams hate on Notre Dame. They can't survive without a conference. They need that money. That football program need the money. They gotta have it. And the reality of it is Notre Dame doesn't want to split any of its money, whether it's the TV rights, this college football playoff. Think about it. And there's going to be a lot of issue with the seeding. You watch. Notre Dame's not going to get that 5 spot no matter how hard Notre Dame plays. If Oregon wins, they're going to put Oregon at the number 5 spot. You mark my words. The 5th spot is going to be the easiest spot to go into. I promise you, it's the easiest one. And they're not going to put Notre Dame there. They want Notre Dame to have to play the gauntlet. That's what they're going to want. But guess what? We got a plan for them this year. If they let Colorado in the playoffs, they will get the brakes beat off of them. Absolutely, Brad. I agree 110% with that. Colorado has not played anybody. And like I said, Brad brings up wonderful points on the show. And a lot of times these are points that I could just actually do a whole show on. And eventually when the show goes into live mode, streaming mode, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have like-minded fans of the show onto the show. And we're going to talk. And it's not going to just be me running my mouth for over an hour. And he's going back. He says he's going back to his sister's again for supper, Thanksgiving leftovers. Yeah. I hope all of you guys have gotten done with your Thanksgiving leftovers. But if you were like some families, here we are, still eating on them. But that's not a bad thing, especially if it's banana pudding or sweet and pumpkin pie. Gotta do what you do. Gotta do what you do. But let us get into the nitty gritty. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and it's awesome to see you guys back here yet again. Happy to see you all back here as we get prepared for Black Week. And that's what it was. It wasn't just Black Friday. It wasn't Black Thursday. It was Black Tuesday for some teams. Teams like the Tulane Green Wave, who saw the Memphis Tigers put a 34-24 beating on them. And basically destroyed any opportunity, not only playing in the conference championship. Oh, excuse me. This is a huge blow for them considering they're going to play for their conference championship. But, yeah, this was one of the teams that I thought was going to be exceptionally great offensively. But you come in and you say, Mensah had 317 and 2 scores, but he had an interception. And then you look at Mario Anderson for the Memphis Tigers. He had 177 yards on the ground, which is Memphis's calling card. A big-time running game. And once again, it showed up on display. And Tulane was unable to slow down this running game. And it showed just how efficient that this Memphis offense is. But however, when you look at this Tulane team, the one thing they did not do this season was turn the ball over. What we have here, you look at Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. You got 26-15 in favor of first downs. Memphis wins that battle. You got total yards, 454 to 374 for the Memphis Tigers. That's number 2. You look at the turnover battle. Memphis had none. Tulane had 3. And not to mention, you had a 2-to-1 time of possession in favor of Memphis. You're not going to win that way. They lost all 3 major categories, and that did it. That did them in. Tulane does go into the Conference USA Championship, and this is an athletic conference. I think it is AAC now. Yeah, and ultimately we had Mario Williams for the Tulane Green Wave had 7 grabs, 130 yards on a score. Yeah, looking at this team, they're going to be a lot of trouble. I think this is going to be a team that more than likely will get in the playoff. Don't know. This is going to be a huge toss-up between them and who ends up going in the Army game, and this is going to be huge. I don't know where they're going to go with that at-large bid. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But Tulane falls to 9-3. Memphis goes to 10-2 after a 34-24 whipping of Tulane in their building. Next, we move on to a guy who, in my opinion, should be the Heisman front runner, not just because Deion says Travis Hunter should be there. And he's done a great job lobbying for him. I think ultimately, when people say you want guys that don't talk and brag a lot, unfortunately, when you have a lot of people that go behind Deion Sanders, that's not telling people that you should just play and shut up. You're telling people that they need to play and talk about it. And I'm one of those guys. Ashton Jonty doesn't talk. His coach finally came out and said, you got to play in a championship game if you're the best player in the country. And I was like, ooh, shots fired. And I agree. You the best player in the country. Where you at? Where you at? Once again, the Boise State Broncos prove what they're all about as they beat the Oregon State Beavers 34-18. As Jonty has 37 carries, 226 yards, and a touchdown. Now, for most of you don't know, and if you're really not getting a lot of details about what Jonty can do. This is a guy that's got 312 carries on the year, 2,288 yards. Now, for most of you who don't know, Barry, the former superstar Detroit Lion, Oklahoma State running back Barry Sanders holds the record at 2,628 yards. And he won the Heisman. Now, Jonty's got 2 more games to do this. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's no record that Travis Hunter's broken. Sorry, you can sit here and make up every excuse in the book, but the reality of it is we are always talking about the humble athlete. There's nothing humble about Travis Hunter. I mean, Jonty doesn't do this for recognition. He balls out and just balls out. Now, if you want to say, look at the competition he's played, who the heck has Travis Hunter played? Baylor? That's the best one on your list? I mean, I'm just saying there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, he ain't played nobody. Well, let's look at it. They played Washington State, a team that's going bowling, and they played the University at Oregon at the Autzen Zoo. Now, let us look at what my man Ashton Jonty did in this matchup. 25 carries, 192 yards. Count them. 1, 2, 3 touchdowns. I can't look up a game where Travis Hunter even played a team in the top 10. He played against the number 1 team in the land. They were number 7 at the time, but they are number 1. They beat the odds at the Autzen Zoo. Lost by 3 points. And Jonty had almost 200 yards rushing. Ashton Jonty should win the Heisman. Boise State will go into the week hosting the UNLV Running Rebels for their championship. And hopefully, and I'm an Ashton Jonty guy. I think he should win it. Next, we have the Egg Bowl. And this was by far not a game that you just looked at and said, oh, well, Ole Miss did not have an impressive game here. I don't want to hear this whole narrative about the SEC is tough. Mississippi State's won 2 games, and they've lost all 8 games in the conference. Because I'm going to be honest with you, when every team in the SEC looks around and they see a team that has not won a game in their conference, they're terrible. Guess what? Mississippi State's terrible. Ain't got nothing to do with, oh, it's tough, it's the SEC. Let's look, shall we? Jackson Dart threw for 143. Michael Van Buren Jr. threw for 280. Threw a touchdown and had 2 interceptions. Jackson Dart also ran for 77 yards. Ulysses Bentley had a 136 and a score. As a team, they had 254. What does that tell you? They just bad at stopping the run. Kevin Coleman Jr. had 6 grabs for 118 yards for the Bulldogs. And as they wrap their season up and try to find some answers going into the offseason, as Coleman also lost a fumble in this game. But Ole Miss goes to 9-3. Yeah, 5-3 in the conference. Yeah. And they'll be on the bubble as far as how the committee feels about them. Me personally, they shouldn't get in. Speaking of the Heisman, we've got number 25, Colorado 52, Oklahoma State 0. This looked like one of those games where I hate to say this, but Mike Gundy looks like he just threw in the towel in this game. And I mean, look, here's the thing. Colorado's a decent team, but they ain't no way they 52 points better. They're just not. I mean, you see here you've got 4 turnovers, 2 fumbles, and 2 interceptions. And as I said before, you could have done a lot of things in this game. But as I said, running the football was the thing that I did not get. I watched this game and I said to myself, when I first called this game, I was saying straight up that Oklahoma State was going to run the air out of the ball. Ollie Gordon had 4 carries for 10 yards. I was like, I know blame well this ain't happening. It's like he took him out the game, and it was just almost like there was a Yeah, we ain't got it. We ain't got it. We just ain't got it. And then Sanders threw for 438, 5 touchdowns and a pick. It just looked like they threw in the towel. That was ultimately what it looked like for the longest time. After those turnovers, it was just LaJohntay Webster had 11 grabs, 175 yards, 2 scores. Travis Hunter had 10 grabs, 116 and 3. And as I said, that's impressive. But when you look at a guy who's going to break an all-time record on the verge of it, and see, there's a lot of people rooting for him because he's from right here in Swanee, Georgia. I get it. But there's no denying what you've got in one Ashton Jeanty. I mean, you can't sit here and say, oh, because this guy plays both sides of the ball well, predicated on his talent. And then you've got a guy, Travis Hunter's numbers are 92 and 1152 for 14 scores. And then, of course, he's got 4 interceptions. Impressive enough. But the reality of it is, he ain't Ashton Jeanty. He's not. And as we've said, the level of competition is weak on both ends. But the reality of it is, let's look at the best game that first the best opponent that the Colorado Buffaloes have. And I can tell you right now, that's not going to look good. It is not going to look good because the truth of the matter is they've got nothing. The best football team they've got, you could argue, is the 8-4 Baylor Bears. And looking at this game where they needed a Hail Mary to win this game, Hunter had 7 for 130. No touchdowns. None. 7 for 130. 0 touchdowns. He had no interceptions. This is against an 8-4 Baylor team, people. Listen to what I said. 7 for 130. No touchdowns. I rest my case. Because when you want to start talking what's real and what's not, best player does not disappear in the biggest moments. Now, granted, he had 7 grabs for 130, but Ashton Jeanty almost had 200 yards rushing and 3 scores against the number 1 team in the land. Baylor's 8-4 and unranked. Do the math. Colorado 52, Oklahoma State nothing. Colorado is not playing anybody and is probably done outside of their bowl game. And the same thing with this overrated Missouri team. Why are they still in here? 28-21 over the Arkansas Razorbacks. And I'm just really sick of seeing Missouri in this AP top 25. You just keep giving them opportunity after opportunity. Why? I mean, I can't understand for the life of me. Why do we keep having this discussion about Missouri? We can't, to me, Missouri's, I'd rather watch Tulane. Just another excuse for overinflating the Southeastern Conference. Let's do this real quick, y'all. I keep saying I'm tired of seeing Missouri in here. Why are they in here? I mean, you beating up on Buffalo and Murray, then you squeak by Boston College, squeak by Vanderbilt, got blown out by A&M, blow up UMass. Georgia just did that, so you ain't doing nothing. Auburn, you squeak by Auburn. You got blown out by Bama. You squeak by Oklahoma. South Carolina beat you. You blew out Mississippi State and you beat Arkansas by a few points. What is the appeasement here? I don't get it. They're not the 21st best team in the country. I can tell you that right now. Brady Cook, not impressive. Marcus Carroll, not impressive. Theo Weiss Jr. had 4 grabs for 100 yards. The senior is 6'2", 192 pounds. Probably going to be a pretty decent pick in the draft. Meanwhile, Andrew Armstrong, 9 grabs, 128 yards on the Arkansas side. This is a 6'4", 202 pound senior who's probably going to be the envy of a lot of draft scouts out there. Big receivers are very welcome. If this guy has any kind of speed, which it's hard to tell when you see him on film because these guys play such a shaded defense. When they see that a guy has an advantage or a size advantage, they're going to usually shade his way. But he ends the season with 78 grabs, 1140, and a score. But I look forward to seeing what his draft stock is coming out of this. But once again, the overrated Missouri Tigers 28, Arkansas Razorbacks finished their season at 6-6. And the Missouri Tigers more than likely are going to get a pretty decent bowl game. Next, we've got the Illinois Illini 38 and the Northwestern Wildcats 28. As the Wildcats will finish the season at 4-8. And impressively enough, this is a game that could have gone either way had Northwestern been able to hang on to the football. If you look at Mr. Celo's formula for the upset, the Wildcats had a pick six go their way. And that was huge when you think about that they also turned the ball over 4 times. So if you can get one of those paybacks, that's a huge deal, especially if you're coming in as a huge underdog in your favor. And when you think about how Illinois has finished its season, winning 9 games with an opportunity to win a 10th game going into its bowl game, they've had some really heartbreaking losses. And of course, losing to the two of the 3 powerhouses in Oregon and Penn State, and then losing that gut wrencher to Minnesota a couple of weeks ago. You could be looking at an Illinois team that's sitting at 10-2. And possibly having an argument to be in the college football playoff. But as is, once again, what played Illinois was the turnovers. As Aiden Lowry had 12 carries, 172 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was a huge in this game. Northwestern could not stop him. And then you had Luke Altmaier, who did his usual, 170 and a score and two interceptions, which I didn't understand why Illinois just didn't keep giving Lowry the ball. He was just straight killing the Northwestern Wildcats. Jack Lausch went 25 of 48, 287, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. It seemed like he was hooking up with A.J. Henning a priority. The 5'10 senior, who's now amassed 59 grabs for 603 yards and 4 touchdowns, was a huge problem for the Illini, as Henning caught 10 balls for 119 yards and a score. But outside of that, the Northwestern Wildcats couldn't get very much going on the outside of that. Mac Ulen had 12 total tackles on the day. Aiden Hubbard and Anto Saka had a sack apiece, as well as Jaheim Clark from the Illini and Ryan Mead each had double digits in tackles. Malachi Hood also followed up with 2 sacks. As the Illini go to 9-3 and the Northwestern Wildcats fall to 4-8. Then we move to the UNLV Running Rebels, who were able to knock off the Nevada Wolfpack 38-14 and move to 10-2 behind Haj Malik Williams is 168 yards through the air, 168 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, as well as his 104 yards on the ground and his score. Jaden Thomas also added 15 carries for 135 yards and a touchdown. This team's going to be fun to watch in the near future with this type of system that they're running and the type of athletes that they have. With Jaden Thomas being a sophomore, but as is, they finished the season at 10-2. Brandon Lewis went 27 of 37, 292 yards, 2 scores, and an interception for the Nevada Wolfpack, as they will finish the season at 3-10. Moving on, we got number 19 BYU 30 and the Houston Cougars who finished the season at 4-8, 18. Now this game had some extra jitters for a lot of people, because if BYU doesn't win this game, Colorado gets a spot in the Big 12 championship game. So a lot of people, such as myself, were hoping that BYU could fall, because I want to see what Deion's team can do in a big pressure game. But as it was, Jake Retzlaff and his crew were able to get it together enough and find a way to put Houston away. It was a 9-8 second half. It looked like this game was going to get ugly in the second quarter, but Houston was able to tack on at least a field goal. I mean, to me, this game felt like Houston never had a chance. It just seemed like there were opportunities that the BYU Cougars just gave to the Houston. They just gave to the Houston Cougars. They just could not take advantage. It was almost like they were not allowing them to win the game. As Zion Chris threw an interception. So it was just a battle of just the turnovers. It was a team to see who could hang on to the football. If it was a question of who was going to hang on to the football long enough to go down the field. And BYU was able to do it enough, and they'll get a pretty good a good bowl game at being at 10-2. It'll be exciting to see what this defense can do in the postseason. Next, we've got a pretty good nail biter. I should have moved up, but number 18 Iowa State 29, number 24 Kansas State 21. As the Iowa State Cyclones punched their ticket into the Big 12 title game, and this was a game from start to finish that looked like, well, let me rephrase that. The first half was action-packed. In the second half, it was kind of like, does anybody want to score a touchdown? And Kansas State ended up scoring the only touchdown in the second half. It was 7-5 in the second half. I mean, it ended up being 24-14 at halftime. It looked like it was going to be a race to the finish line. And it was very conservative. As Avery Johnson for Kansas State was 12 of 28, 220 yards, 3 scores. Jace Brown had 3 grabs for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. And going back over to the Iowa State side of things, Rocco Beck, 132, 2 touchdowns. Abu Sami had 15 carries, 81 yards. And it turned out to be a game where you just kind of looked and you said, does anybody really want to win this thing? And ultimately, Kansas State was just unable to get in the end zone after they got into the end zone the first time. They had 4 They had 2 turnover on downs and a missed field goal. This is how the possessions went in the second half. Where they had a missed field goal, then they had a touchdown, safety, turnover on downs, turnover on downs. Yeah. So, yeah, Kansas State had their opportunities. They just couldn't get it in the end zone. But as it stands, Iowa State will go to Tempe and face off against the Iowa State. Iowa State will go to Tempe and face off with the surging Arizona State Sun Devils for the Big 12 title and a shot at one of those big Power 5 spots. Speaking of which, number 16 Arizona State 49, Arizona 7. Impressive win nonetheless. I mean, Arizona has not been what myself or many people thought. Fafita has not fulfilled what he has, and I think a lot of it is that offensive line is just not good. It really is not good. And Ted McMillan had 6 grabs for 68 yards and a touchdown. The NFL scouts are drooling for this kid, 6'5", 212. They've already projected this guy's going to be one of the top wide receivers in the draft. A lot of people are saying he could very well go before Travis Hunter. Hey, listen, if my Carolina Panthers get the pick before that, I don't want Travis Hunter. That's who I want. I want Ted McMillan. That's who I want. But as it stands, right now Arizona's going into a tough off season because many people like myself thought Fafita was going to be that guy, and unfortunately for Arizona, he's going to have to get that back. Sean Levitt for the Arizona State Sun Devils, 17 of 22, 291, 3 scores. And then you look at Cam Scatibo had 21 carries, 171, and 3 scores. Then you add Kyson Brown had 8 carries for 100 yards. That is not good when your defense is so handicapped that they give up 200-yard rushers. These guys had 277 yards rushing amongst themselves. That ain't good. Then you look at Jordan Tyson, who had 8 grabs for 143 yards. That's going to be a hard ask for ISU to be able to cover. This is going to be a battle of to see who can make the fewest mistakes coming up. Genesis Smith and Tay Brown had 10 tackles apiece for the Arizona defense. And unfortunately, offensively, it did not look pleasant for the Arizona Wildcats. And they're going to need some serious rebuilding as they will not go to the bowl game. This was their finale, as Arizona State will host Iowa State for a shot at the college football playoff and claim to the first Big 12 championship in their inaugural season. The Iron Bowl, Alabama 28, Auburn 14. As the Crimson Tide kind of bounced back a little bit, Milroe had 256 yards and an interception, no touchdowns, but he had 17 carries, 104 yards, 3 scores. Jam Miller had 28 carries for 84 yards, something that I'm used to seeing from a Crimson Tide football team is more carries than passes. They had 54 carries, 201 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Much better when you look at the comparison to 40 and 50 passes that he had been throwing. He threw 24 in this one. Peyton Thorne was 24 of 41, 301, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Most impressive was the fact that Thorne has gotten better over the year, and that's always a positive uptick from when you start thinking about what do we got for next year, because they've got Deuce Knight, the former Notre Dame Flip, is going to be attending the University of Auburn, and the question is, will he be starting? Jeremy Bernard had 7 grabs for the Crimson Tide for 111 yards, and needless to say, Ryan Williams was active but not overly involved in this game. That's not to say that he's not going to be involved in the future, but everybody is just, they're aware of this guy. One of the top freshmen in the country, so you can't get caught napping with this guy. But 28-14 as Alabama awaits its fate with the College Football Committee, and possibly whether it's going to be in one of these slots. Number 10, Indiana 66, Purdue 0. As many of you know, Purdue has parted ways with its coach after this game. I'm not sure if that's right. Well, who knows? All I can say is that it was Curtis Rourke throwing 23 of 31, 349, and 6 touchdowns, making a real statement out there. As Elijah Surratt, whom was a guy that I really started to like watching when he played against the Buckeyes. I thought ultimately this was a bad coaching job, as I told you guys. I thought ultimately they did make adjustments, but he had 8 catches for 165 yards and 2 scores, and was really a shadow of himself. And I thought this was not a well-coached, the Ohio State game was not well-coached enough, and I would love to see Indiana in the playoff. Yes, you heard me. I would love to see Indiana in the playoff. Once again, Indiana finishes 11-1. That's right. 11-1. You didn't go to your college championship game, you ain't getting in. Sorry, Bama. Sorry, Ole Miss, but I'm not sorry. 3 losses. You didn't go to your championship game. Deuces. Number 9, arguably, pony up. Number 9, SMU 38. Cal 6. I cannot wait to see this team. This is the team that nobody in the college football playoff wants to see. Even me, I don't want to see this team, because they present so many nightmarish scenarios for you. Now, quietly, California kept Jennings and Brashard Smith in check. Now, you're talking about they had 97 yards total rushing and a touchdown. Jennings had 225 and 2 touchdowns. Now, the reason why you look at it and you say, why did they have 38? Well, let's see. You've got Cal had one touchdown. It was an interception. So literally it was a game of field position. A lot of it is what it was. A lot of it was field position. You've got a 54-yard drive they had, a 62-yard drive, and a 44-yard drive. And then the interception that they had was at their own 23-yard line, So, I mean, really a lot of not so long fields. And that's what you want. You have to be able to, but biggest thing with SMU is you have to be able to maintain their running game. Now, they didn't do a bad job, and I'm referring to they as California. They didn't do a bad job, but you got to make Jennings throw that thing down the field. Even though he threw for 300, you got to make them one-dimensional. And it's hard to do that when these guys are so inept at improvisation. But the 17 penalties SMU had were huge in backing them up as well. 17 for 137. That's definitely something they're going to have to clean up before they get into the college football playoff if they expect to be successful. Very heavy penalized team is SMU, but they go to 11-1, and it's good to see this program back from the 40-year death penalty that was instilled on them. And if many of you don't know that, go look up the story. ESPN did a 30 for 30 on SMU and the death penalty. Number 8, Tennessee 36, Vanderbilt 23. Not much to say. Pavia was not at his best. He had 45 yards on the ground, 104 in the air, and had a costly interception. As Nico Iamaleava had 18 of 26, 257, 4 touchdowns and an interception. Dylan Sampson still doing what he does. 25 carries, 178. No touchdowns in this one. Iamaleava had all of those. Dante Thornton had 3 grabs for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. The 6'5 senior, who's another guy that I'm impressed with. Although he only has 25 grabs for 647 and 6 scores, it's big to think a guy that has a 25.9 yard average per catch. So got to consider that at some point. I mean, I would definitely like to see this guy in a Carolina Panther uniform if we can't get Tet. But needless to say, this was a game where the Vanderbilt was playing over its head. They were playing with house money as they've been ever since they beat Alabama. They finished 6-6. Tennessee was proving too much. They're showing the whole world that they deserve to be in the college football playoff, and I would say here they are. Number 8 Tennessee goes to 10-2, and they will be watching as they will watch the SEC title game commence. And arguably, one of 2 upsets that nobody saw coming this week, including myself, of Syracuse 42, Miami 38. As I was telling somebody today, they're saying that Cam Ward doesn't deserve to win the Heisman. But I mean, when you get a guy that throws for 349 and 2 touchdowns, what else can he do? I mean, at some point, this Miami defense has to stop somebody. I mean, I'm not trying to. I'm just being honest. When you get to a point, he's been basically bailing this bad defense out all year. I don't like to say bad defense. I really don't. But this Miami defense has been. I mean, when you put up 38 points, you're supposed to win. I don't care. Once it gets over 30, that's just bad defense. It turns into a shootout. Trevor Pena had 6 grabs for the Syracuse Orange and 128 yards and a score. He's now got 79 grabs for 871 and 7 touchdowns. Where are all these good receivers from Syracuse coming from? Jackson Meeks had 73 grabs, 911 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He's a senior. And he also had 7 grabs for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. As Kyle McCord threw 26 of 36 for 380 and 3 touchdowns. There's not really anything else you can ask him to do. I mean, really, it's just Miami defense. It's just not good. My man Xavier Restrepo had 9 grabs, 148 yards on this game, and he ends up the regular season at 69 grabs, 1127, and 11 touchdowns. He's going to be a good shifty guy going at the next level. He'll be a great slot receiver at the next level. But he did have a lost fumble in this game, which is not saying a normal or it's been a problem, but it's happening. Jacoby George had 6 grabs, 121 yards. He ends the season with 51 grabs, 728, and 7 scores. And I'm just going, I can't stress it enough. This football team has wasted one of the most talented quarterbacks to come into their program in a really long time. And they finished 10-2, and more than likely they're going to finish outside of the college football playoff because, as we see it, many of these analysts do not like Miami. They pick on the schedule, but my reality is they did lose 2 games. So I think ultimately you have to look at it for what it is. Do I think Cam Ward can score against any offense and defense in the country? Of course. There is no doubting that. South Carolina 17, Clemson 14. I actually saw this coming. And Clemson's going to now limp into the ACC title game and be the lamb to slay for SMU. That's the way I look at it. Clemson's not going to win this game. I mean, I'm going to go at it like this because to me, South Carolina is a good team, but they couldn't beat SMU. But let's go ahead and look at it. Cade Klubnik, 24 of 36, 280 and an interception. Phil Maffa got absolutely wasted in this game. 20 carries, 66 yards. Klubnik darn near had more yards than he did. 62 yards on 2 touchdowns. Which, as I said, I thought was a good idea for Dabo and his coaching staff to get Cade moving. I think it's a brilliant idea. It adds variety to your offense. Especially when Cade has not shown the ability to be a consistent passer. Maffa had a huge fumble loss today, and I thought that was a huge shift. Lenore Sellers is showing that he's going to be a force in this conference. He's 6'3", 242 pounds, and he is just getting started. 6'3", 242? Where'd this kid come from? Oh, my goodness. How in the world did he not get... Now, I will admit, when people get film on you, they stop you. Supposedly. But then he had 164 yards throwing the football, and he had an interception. But needless to say, if you had to choose between Cade Klubnik and Lenore Sellers, I will take Lenore Sellers for 500, Alex. Who cares? Yeah, outside of that, I don't see Clemson being able to do anything. Do I think South Carolina should get in the college football playoff? The answer to that question is simple. Let's look at your impressive wins compared to your defeats. You beat Missouri by 4. You beat Clemson by 3. You did blow out A&M. You don't have one, really. Yeah, all 3 of your losses came against really good football teams, so that really kills that narrative in itself. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, if you got a good loss, you don't want them in there. If you got a bad loss, that's the point of losses. I mean, I hate to sound like duh, but that's the problem. You got Paul Findum sitting there trying to say, I think the SEC. He's an SEC fanboy. You can't listen to him. He's biased. He doesn't watch other conferences. The same things that go on in other conferences go on in the SEC. Teams recruit to beat certain teams. Okay? Point blank. That's why you look at Texas being successful, and then you look at teams that are doing well, and you look at it how things are done. You look at how they do it. And the truth of the matter is, when we think about where these rankings are, I'm a firm believer the way it needs to be. You say they're the best team. Okay, well, here's the reality. Why didn't they prove it in these games they play? The point is, you play the regular season for it. If you're going to sit here and call it like, I don't remember who it was, say, you're going to call it the Big Ten SEC Invitational, just call it that. And these other teams can stop pouring money into it under the false pretense that they're going to be invited and that you're going to pick unbiased. I think the college committee has done some things right, and I would say about 70% of the time they've gotten it right. But if you listen to somebody like Paul Feinbaum, you don't need to do it that way. Just saying. And I think Stephen A. Smith is absolutely right. Might as well just go to 16 teams. Might as well go to 16 if you're going to sit here and put all these SEC teams in there. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, 49. The USC Trojans, 35. I know. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this score and they're going to say, oh, y'all only beat a 6-6 team by 14 points. Well, let's look at it. One, they're in the Coliseum. Arguably, this should have been a 21-point blowout, but USC got the football and decided they're going to try to run it back down the field while USC proceeded to run the ball down the field, 5 plays, 75 yards. And, yeah, I mean, this was a game that basically Lincoln Riley should have just ran the clock out. You had 1:05 left, and you basically get 5 run plays. And I can tell you, what I would have done if I was Marcus Freeman is put my backups in there. That's what I would have done and had them stop USC. But instead, as it was, they let them run it down the field and, mess up that 21-point blowout that we had going. Yeah, I think ultimately, looking at the Irish, many people are not going to like what I'm about to say. I really don't care at this point because Notre Dame has won 10 games straight. Most people have not paid attention. They have not seen this football team in its entirety. All they've seen is highlights. They've seen maybe a couple of clips and Powell Feinbaum giving his ignorant thoughts on it. He's been wrong many times about the teams outside of the Southeastern Conference and been wrong about many of the teams inside the Southeastern Conference. Yeah, needless to say, this is a football team that there's going to be a lot of teams that do not want to see them. But looking at this and looking at how Notre Dame played, especially with those 2 pick sixes, and I want to clear the air. I haven't done my Talk Like a Champion show, which is my Notre Dame All Access show, but there were a lot of people that were giving Notre Dame flack saying the defense played horrible. Let's just say Lincoln Riley is just a great offensive coach. Look, they came out and they had USC's number. Then there's the turnover, and then USC runs up the field, and a lot of it was back shoulder throws. When Notre Dame wasn't playing man, they had a lot of zone that basically that the rookie Maava was able to take advantage of, which in my eyes he was very impressive. Jaden Maava had 27 of 49, 360, 3 touchdowns, and those 2 pick sixes, which were back shoulder throws. Well, one of them was a back shoulder throw, and the other one was just a throw where he basically was trying to get rid of it. He was scrambling for his life and just heaved it. And of course, probably going to go down as one of the greatest safeties in Notre Dame history. Xavier Watts comes down with it, houses it. So, and when people are sitting here talking about how bad the defense played, that's what happens when you have high expectations for a defense. And honestly, USC has a very good offense. Now, and the reality of it is, Woody Marks did go out of this game. Quentin Joyner had a good game coming in for him. Brian Jackson had a good game. He had 71 yards and 83 yards. I will say USC's running game was impressive. Mekhi Lemon had a very good game. 9 grabs, 133 yards. But here's a hint, my friend. Check the scoreboard before you start talking trash. I'm just going to keep it in perspective, my friend. You were down 3 scores when you caught a ball and you just pointing that way. You're losing. You're losing. Don't do that. Mitchell Evans for the Irish had 5 grabs, 59 yards, and a touchdown. As Riley Leonard continues his march towards being a complete quarterback, he had 155 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and a back shoulder fade interception. Jadarian Price had 12 grabs, 111 yards, and a touchdown. Jeremiah Love had 13 carries, 99 yards, and an incredible hurdle play that led to a touchdown. So we've got Notre Dame's got arguably one of the best 1-2 punches in the country that it doesn't get talked about. So fortunately for the Irish, they're going to be able to walk into the playoff and introduce themselves. As I said, the 2 pick sixes were courtesy of Christian Gray, whom was really getting abused by the USC quarterback. And finally, he got tired of the back shoulder fade. He picked this thing off and took it to the house. 99 yards, and then Xavier Watts followed up with a 100-yard house call. The longest, tied for the longest in Notre Dame history. As the Irish go to 11-1 on a 10-game winning streak when it looked like the season was going to be lost, the Irish have made tracks and are going to surprise a lot of people in the end. Number 4, Penn State 44, Maryland 7, as this was not even a contest, as the Terrapins couldn't put up much of a struggle, as the Penn State Nittany Lions come out and they just absolutely obliterate the Maryland Terrapins with 412 yards of offense to their 194. Maryland had 3 turnovers, and you can't win that way. And ultimately, Penn State goes to 11-1. And via some things that happened, the Penn State Nittany Lions will face the Oregon Ducks. As the Washington Huskies find out why the Oregon Ducks are the number 1 team in the land as they go to the Autzen Zoo. Totally opposite of what happened last year. It's kind of different when you don't have Michael Penix or Kalen DeBoer behind the controls, right? 49-21 as Dylan Gabriel goes 16 of 23, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Jordan James goes for 99 yards, 2 touchdowns as the Oregon Ducks continue their dominance through the Big Ten and will have an opportunity to face off with the Penn State Nittany Lions for the first time this season. As this matchup will be, I don't see this being much of a matchup, but the reason why this game is going to be what it is because the Ohio State Buckeyes and Ryan Day have lost their 4th consecutive game against the Michigan Wolverines, this time with no Jim Harbaugh. Let us look at why this game went the way it went. Will Howard, in my opinion, like I've said many times, Will Howard is not the answer. How they got stuck on this guy, I will never, ever know. Because the Ohio State Buckeyes only ran for 77 yards. Meanwhile, the one thing the Michigan Wolverines can do, run the football. And run it they did. 41 times for 173 yards. As Caleb Mullings ran for 116 yards and a touchdown. On 32 carries now. Got to get that in there. As Junkins and Henderson combined for 67 yards. You ain't going to win a game like that. And how many times have I told guys, and I've told you guys, there ain't no way I'm letting Will Howard beat me throw the football. Ain't no way. Get this. The Ohio State Buckeyes outgained the Michigan Wolverines by 17 yards. Turnovers were even, but the Wolverines controlled the clock by almost 7 minutes. And Ohio State also had 3 more first downs. But ultimately, what it boiled down to was total yardage. And the reality of it is, when you do not convert, you had a missed field goal in this game. And you had a turnover that turned into points for Michigan. Then you had a turnover on top of a turnover, and you missed the field goal yet again. Yeah. That basically was the short end of it. And there's a lot of talk about whether Ryan Day should come back. I don't know, but I'll say this. I know a lot of people are saying you're supposed to win the game. But I also look at the fact that Ryan Day has only lost 1 game if you take out Michigan. He's lost 5 games in his career. Only lost 1 to someone other than Michigan in the Big Ten. Just saying, y'all. Just saying. Michigan 13, Ohio State 10, as Michigan goes to 7-5, and I've heard they've parted ways with their OC, so there's going to be some serious changes there. the Big Blue. Texas 17, A&M 7. This game was absolute. This game could have been worse than it was because you take away Quinn Ewers' pick six. This is a shutout. I mean, Texas's defense was stifling, and honestly, Texas A&M. I'm really glad that Texas handled business because it was at one point in this second quarter where it looked like Texas was about to put the smackdown on them, and they went for it. I'm sorry. They had a drive that was really going down the field, and they had a huge penalty on 4th down and 3. A delay of game on 4th and 3, and that could have been the difference in that game, in my opinion. You get that field, you get that touchdown instead of a field goal. You go in at 21-0 at the half. And after that, it seemed like Texas was just kind of like, nah, we don't really want to do a lot. But it was turnovers. Turnovers after turnovers. You had the pick six, and then you turn around and you go all the way down the field, and you can't turn the ball over. And I think ultimately, if the Texas Longhorns are going to beat the Georgia Bulldogs, they're going to have to be turnover free. See, Sarkisian has already said that he wants to win the SEC title in the first year that he's in here. I agree. I would love to do that. But I don't think Quinn Ewers is the dude. If you catch my drift. Texas 17, A&M 7. The Longhorns go to 11-1 and will face the Dogs on Saturday. Speaking of the Dogs, Georgia 44, Georgia Tech 42, as it took you 8 OTs, Brad. 8.
What the
Bruh. Last I checked, Notre Dame spanked them in 4 quarters. Well, technically 3 if you want to. Yeah. All I can say is this game was a game that I gotta give a gab out to my man Romello Height. You played your butt off, partner. Y'all played good. Yeah. Haynes King is not a quarterback. As well as he threw the ball in certain instances, there were passes early in that game. If he hits them, this game's over. If you guys remember in the first quarter, there was a throw that he threw behind the receiver on a slant. All he had to do is drop it over his head. Touchdown. Georgia's got some issues. I know what people are going to say. They were looking towards the SEC title game. You can call it what you want. Call it what you want. I said that Georgia Tech was going to be an issue. And honestly, like I said, Georgia Tech is going to have to look at their head coach and say, why didn't we go for it after the first overtime? That's what I would have did. Because once it gets further in, it goes back to what the announcers were saying. You don't have that many 2-point conversion plays. And this is not where you want to be. You go get them once you score the touchdown, because guess what? They're going to be on their heels. You go out there, you tell the guys, once we score a touchdown, we're going for 2. This is the play we're running. Everybody is in the game on that previous play. When you call the play, you let them know, this is the play we're running. We're going to run up to the line and run it quick. We ain't even going to give Georgia a chance to set up. They didn't do that. Beck was 28 of 43, 297, and 5 touchdowns. Haynes King had probably his best passing game of his career, but there was 2 he left on the field. He's going to kick himself. The fumble everybody's talking about, yeah, they were talking about it was helmet to helmet. I didn't see all that. I did see a picture that could have been that, but the reality of it is it should have never went to that. Georgia Tech should have put him away in the regulation. Haynes King 110, 3 touchdowns. He had 5 total touchdowns in this game. Jamal Haynes had 13 carries for 91 yards. There were times I thought King should have let Haynes have it, and there were times that King should have kept. Still having trouble reading. Eric Singleton had a good game, 8 grabs for 86 yards and a touchdown. And as I said, Georgia, Dominic Lovick had a lost fumble. Haynes King had that huge lost fumble right there that could have sealed the game after they had gotten that first down. And it's just a good all-around football game. I enjoyed it. Even as a guy that can't stand the Georgia Bulldogs, I enjoyed that football game. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, it's one of those games that you hate to see anybody lose. But Georgia will be going to Atlanta this Saturday to face off with the Longhorns in the SEC title game. More than likely, they've punched their way into the college football playoff. But as I said, this is going to be a disaster if Texas can't run the football. But Georgia Tech finishes the season at 7-5, and they should be getting a pretty good bowl game, and they should know all about it in the next couple of maybe in the next week or two. But let me know what you guys think. Go to my Facebook page at Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Let me know what you liked and disliked about the show. Also, go down in my comments and let me know what games you like to talk about, what other things you saw that you didn't like about my content, or let me know what things you do like about it. Tell me if you don't like Brad's comments. Also, go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo and let me know what things so you can catch up with me on the certain things that I'm also involved in. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.